Hello, this is Patricia welcoming you to the 2147th edition of the Enfield Talking newspaper, Dateline 14th of June 2018. The readers this week are Katherin, Romany, Ros, Patricia and Dem on the controls. The editor was Phillip and the production and distribution team is Lindsay, Jean and Dina. Our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Bouillon, Harry Breuer, and performed by Jean-Jacques Perret and used with his kind permission. The local news stories that we will be reading come from the Enfield Independent and the June edition of EN magazine and are their copyright. The events information has been collated by us from other sources. The lead story this week: Council's plan to hire new staff despite spending cuts. Before the news, we have one or two special news items and notices. First, the sunrise and sunset times for the week beginning Monday the 18th of June are sunrise at 04:42 and sunset at 21:20. Do get in touch with us to share your own news and special announcements. We love to hear from you. If you have any comments about the Enfield Talking newspaper, please phone Diane de Jersey on 020-8805-6578. She is your listener's representative and will be pleased to help you. And now, Ros will read the first item of local news.
Council's plan to hire new staff despite spending cuts. The new leader of Enfield Council has come under fire for allegedly planning to hire a political assistant at a time of ongoing spending cuts. Leader of Enfield Conservative Group, Councillor Joanne Laban, said it was outrageous for new councillor leader, Councillor Nessel Kaliskan, to consider reintroducing the post, which was scrapped more than a decade ago after being deemed unnecessary. According to Councillor Laban, the role has an annual salary of £35,000 with £15,000 a year pension costs. But the council said it was common practice for local authorities to employ people to support the democratic process, and any new post would be funded out of money already set aside. Councillor Ban said, Doug Taylor managed to be leader of the council for 8 years and won 3 elections in a row and did not require a political assistant. The money could be better spent elsewhere. The post is not essential for delivering any service at all. We need to prioritise the money we do have. Enfield Council needs to find between 12 million and 15 million in savings. Something will have to be cut to deliver this, and I would like to know what. She added that both Labour and the Conservative had support in their offices, but it was administrative, not political. Councillor Kaliskan was elected leader of Enfield Council on May the 22nd, having had only 3 years' experience as a councillor. And Enfield Council has been forced to make savings of £161 million since 2010 and will have to make an additional saving of £31 million by 2020 due to cuts in funding from central government. James Price, campaign manager at lobby group the Taxpayers Alliance, said Enfield Council already spent more than £1.2 million on just 10 employees last year, and yet they are talking about spending even more. Taxpayers are sick of suffering council tax increases because councils are addicted to overspending. If they actually want to help residents, the council should leave more of people's money in their pockets, where it belongs. An Enfield Council spokesperson said Enfield Council seeks to provide support to both groups to ensure good governance and support the democratic process. We are currently looking at a range of options to improve this support, all of which are in line with common practice in councils throughout the country, and we will be funding it out of existing services budgets. Any recommendations made on this support would go through the proper democratic process, and any new officer would be recruited in the standard way. The appointment of political assistant is tightly governed, and this pay is capped significantly well below £50,000.
The Metropolitan Police has come under fire for not treating drug dealing on the streets as a priority. Conservative London Assembly member Andrew Boff questioned Assistant Commissioner for the Metropolitan Police, Martin Hewitt, about how the police is tackling a surge in violent crime in the capital. Figures from the Metropolitan Police show that so far this year in the capital there have been 74 murder investigations. Out of those fatalities, 47 of them were committed using a knife and 9 using a firearm. Mr. Boff said, "What attention is the Metropolitan Police giving to drug dealing taking place on the streets in order to tackle violent crime? Because statistics often show that people found carrying a knife are often found carrying drugs." Mr. Hewitt responded that it was an issue the police were, in inverted commas, looking at, as well as fighting drug dealing over county lines, which he said was drawing people into criminality from a young age. During a Police and Crime Committee meeting last month, there was a strong focus on how people dealing drugs across county lines were increasing the drug trade in London. The county lines phenomenon involves criminal gangs setting up drug dealing operations in places outside their usual operating area. The government's first ever serious violence strategy, which was released in April this year, identified county lines as a driver of violence because of turf wars between drug gang rivals. Powers under the Modern Slavery Act are now being used successfully to prosecute members of county line gangs, with the first convictions secured at Swansea Crown Court in December 2017. Referring back to the previous meeting, Mr. Hewitt said that this new legislation would be a major factor in helping to deal with the number of drug-related violent crimes. But Mr. Boff was unsatisfied with this answer and said that it was not just county lines drug dealing that needed to be tackled, and pressed Mr. Hewitt for an answer on how drug dealing on the streets was being dealt with. Mr. Boff asked, "Will you be treating drug dealing on the streets, not just across county lines, as a high priority?" But Mr. Hewitt stressed the need to use resources to tackle county lines. He added, "We need to fight drug dealing in a number of ways, and that means we have to look at it from all ends of the spectrum, from on the streets to across county lines."
Police appeal as man found stabbed. And this article seems to be along similar lines to the one you've just heard. The victim knifed to death over a suspected drug debt has been named as Edmund Januzzi. The 35-year-old Albanian was knifed in North London on Saturday night. He collapsed and died near Turnpike Lane tube station after being stabbed in a nearby park at around 9:30 p.m. His murder brings the death toll in the capital to 74 so far this year. Locals likened the drug operation in Green Lanes area to American crime drama The Wire, as murder squad detectives appealed for witnesses. One said gangsters were recruiting new blood in broad daylight who stash cannabis in lampposts and neighbours' front gardens. The eyewitness said, "As much as I sympathise with the police, if you were to stand here for 2 minutes, you would start to see the patterns. There's no competition. It's all one gang. You see them come in from the tube and on the bus. It's Somalians. The core group is about 10. It's definitely very corporate. I think they get a lot of things from The Wire." Scotland Yard said, "A murder investigation continues following the death of a man near to a busy tube station on Saturday night." Police were called at 9:47 p.m. on Saturday the 9th of June to a seriously injured man in Green Lanes, near to Turnpike Lane station. Officers and London Ambulance Services attended the location. A 35-year-old man was found suffering stab injuries. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The deceased has been identified as Edmund Januzzi, 35, an Albanian national who may have lived locally. Next of kin have been informed. A post-mortem examination will be arranged in due course. A murder investigation has been launched by detectives from the Homicide and Major Criminal Command, HMCC. There's been no arrest in this early stage. Detective Inspector Gary Moncrief said, "It would appear that an altercation occurred between two groups of males in the Duckett's Common area at around 9:45 p.m. on Saturday evening. Edmund was stabbed during that altercation. This was a busy area, very near to Turnpike Lane tube station. There will be people who saw or heard something suspicious that could help us find whoever killed Edmund. I'm appealing for any witnesses or anyone with information to call the incident room at Hendon."
Evacuated from hospital. 45 people were evacuated from a hospital after a fire broke out on the night of Monday, the 11th of June. 7 people have been treated for smoke inhalation at Chase Farm Hospital at the Ridgeway in Enfield after a fire on the ground floor of the 2-storey building. A further 15 people were moved to alternative accommodation at the hospital for the night. A London Fire Brigade spokesperson said 8 fire engines and 58 firefighters and police officers were called to the scene. The fire was said to have been limited to the ground floor and only a small part damaged by the fire. Fire Brigade were called at 10:11 p.m. and the flames were brought under control by 12:41 a.m. The site is made up of an acute hospital, an adult mental health unit and Chase Village.
Council cracked down on housing fraud. Enfield Council is working to recover properties from fraudsters to ensure that people in genuine housing need can be given a suitable home. In the last financial year, the Council's fraud investigation team recovered a total of 59 council properties which were being occupied by people with no right to reside in them. By taking back these properties, the Council will save approximately £850,000 a year, the cost of keeping 59 families in expensive temporary accommodation while the same number of council homes are occupied unlawfully. A number of other cases are still under investigation, and the council is also urging residents to help free up more homes in the borough by reporting people suspected of committing housing fraud. In common with many other parts of London, Enfield has a shortage of council homes and high numbers of people waiting for more suitable accommodation. The council needs to make sure that only the people entitled to housing in the borough are given council tenancies. Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Housing, Councillor Dino Lemonidis, said, "We don't want people to make a profit by lying about their entitlement to a council property and preventing a family in genuine need from being given a home. This authority takes housing fraud very seriously, and we will fully investigate every report of illegal subletting and tenancies obtained by deception. It is completely unfair that residents in desperate need of housing cannot have a home because of unscrupulous individuals. In the most serious cases, people who illegally sublet their property or got a tenancy by deception can be prosecuted and face a prison sentence if found guilty. Residents can help the council by confidentially reporting housing fraud at www.enfield.gov.uk or emailing fraud.team@enfield.gov.uk, or of course you can call their team on 0208 379 1000.
Student wins top 10 accolade. A 12-year-old fought off competition from more than 39,000 children across the country to be listed in the top 10 entries for the National Young Writers Award, judged by comedian and children's author David Williams. Edward Adams from the Latimer School was named the regional winner for Chingford last week before the top 10 were announced yesterday. As a children's author, David Williams has written 12 children's novels and 5 picture books for which he has received enormous critical and commercial success. He has been published in 53 languages and sales now exceed 19.3 million units across all editions and, as it stands, he has 10% of the children's fiction market in the UK. His book, The World's Worst Children 2, was the UK's best-selling book for 5 continuous weeks after publication. David says, "I was overwhelmed by the quality and creativity of the stories I was reading and was so impressed that this broad range of exciting ideas have come from such young writers. Each piece of writing drew me in and kept me captivated by clever and observant storylines and engaging characters. We definitely have some future star authors here." Children were tasked with writing a 500-word story on this year's theme, Heroes. Edward impressed the judges with his story, You Can All Laugh If You Want. The competition, organised by tuition provider Explore Learning, is now in its 10th year and inspired thousands of children to create a story. Every child that entered the National Young Writers Awards will receive a certificate to celebrate their story, along with personalised feedback from Explore Learning. The top 10 entries will receive £250 worth of books for their schools from Let's Revision, plus a large print of the opening line of their story by Quirky Line. The overall winner will be selected from these 10 children by David Williams and the team at Explore Learning. He'll surprise the winner with a school assembly on June the 18th, and he will present that person with a trophy, a trip to Disneyland Paris for them and their family, and £500 worth of books for their school. Charlotte Gator, Head of Curriculum at Explore Learning, says this year's National Young Writers Awards attracted a record number of entries, so to make it to the top 10 in the country is really something to be proud of. We have been absolutely blown away by how many children sent us heroic tales and loved reading them all. Hopefully being named one of the top 10 will inspire Edward Adams to continue writing.
March celebrates female suffrage. Thousands of people marched through the streets of London on Sunday to create a living piece of art to mark 100 years since women were granted the vote. Dubbed processions, the march featured hundreds of handmade banners, period costumes, and purple, white and green sashes, the colours of the suffragette movement. Those taking part marched from Hyde Park down Piccadilly, past Trafalgar Square and down towards the river. Women's groups from all over the country attended, many with their partners and children. The event was coordinated by 14 to 18 Now, an art programme connecting people with the First World War, and Artichoke, which stages large-scale art events in public places. The organisers said their intention was to form a living portrait of women in the 21st century and a visual expression of equality, strength and cultural representation. They added, "Processions celebrates the fight for suffrage and expresses what it means to be a woman today." Similar marches were also staged in Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast. One group of friends travelled from Wokingham to take part. Helen Shah, 42, said, "We came because we wanted our children to understand what happened 100 years ago and that they can't take for granted all the things they have now. You can read books, but taking part in something like this is so much better." Parliament granted the vote to women over 30 who met a property requirement in 1918 after decades of campaigning by women's groups. The vote was extended to all women over the age of 21 in 1928.
Arrest is stark warning to young money mules. A 26-year-old has been sentenced for being a money mule for criminals after they transferred £28,000 to his bank account. Sentenced at Inner London Crown Court, Derek Coomson of Keys House, Beaconsfield Road, Enfield, received a 12-month community order and 280 hours of unpaid work. Police from the dedicated card and payment crime unit, which investigated the case, said It served as a stark warning to young people acting as money mules. Coomson pleaded guilty to 2 counts of possession of criminal property. He was found to have willingly allowed his bank accounts to be used to receive over £9,800 in March 2016 on behalf of fraudsters. This was followed by another £18,000 in June the same year. The defendant's phone revealed exchanges of text messages with the fraudsters, giving the use of his accounts, cards and online banking in exchange for a cut. The case was reported after one of the fraudsters' victims reported suspicious transactions to their bank, and all victims were given a full refund. Coomson was arrested on August 18, 2017. The other fraudsters have not been arrested. The case comes amidst a significant rise in money mule fraud. Figures published by CIFAS showed cases involving 18 to 24-year-olds have more than doubled since 2013. Detective Constable David Hughes said, "This case serves as a stark warning that those who allow their bank account to be used by fraudsters will be caught and punished. Acting as a money mule is a crime, which will leave you with a criminal record and a potential prison sentence."
The Mayor says police must be properly funded. The Mayor of London has spoken out about Saturday's stabbing in Haringey, which is the capital's 74th murder investigation this year. The man in his 30s was stabbed on Green Lanes near Turnpike Lane, and Mayor Sadiq Khan said that his thoughts are with the friends and family of the victim, adding, "I am in touch with the local MP and local authority leaders and remain in close contact with the Met Police." Mr Khan said, "The Met's Violent Crime Task Force is arresting criminals and taking knives off our streets every day, and the police must be properly funded now to prevent more lives being lost."
London Assembly price for new Heathrow runway not worth paying. The London Assembly has announced it will campaign against the expansion of Heathrow Airport. Last week, the Cabinet voted in favour of the £14 billion expansion of the airport, which would see a 3rd runway built. The London Assembly has now officially opposed the expansion of the airport. It believes fundamental issues like noise pollution and the cost of expansion remain unresolved. Proposals to build a 3rd runway in Heathrow began in December 2006 when the Department for Transport, which is in brackets DFT, published plans to extend the UK's biggest airport. The DFT said the runway would benefit the UK economy, but the plans face strong opposition from environmental campaigners, local communities and politicians. According to a Freedom of Information, that's FOI in brackets, request made to the Civil Aviation Authority, 973,000 households around the airport will experience daytime noise made by the time the 3rd runway is built in 2050. Transport for London also estimates the cost of surface transport improvements to meet the needs of the expansion have been underestimated by more than £10 billion by the Airport Commission. A motion proposed by the Assembly said it will reiterate its long-standing opposition to a 3rd runway and will campaign to prevent its implementation. Liberal Democrats Assembly member Caroline Pigeon, who proposed the motion, said, One absolute certainty is that a 3rd runway will create noise disturbance for a further 300,000 people and add to higher levels of air pollution in parts of London where air pollution already exceeds illegal levels. A 3rd runway comes at a huge price that is simply not worth paying for. Leonie Cooper, Labour Party Assembly member, added, "It is clear that potential costs and risks to Londoners outweigh the projected economic benefits of all expansion. especially when there are still opportunities to be properly explored at other airports in the southeast.
Students' new garden. Students spent 3 months creating a stunning new garden at their college. Construction and supported learning students landscaped an area at the college's Enfield Centre into a beautiful haven. The garden features a stone centrepiece surrounded by 8 troughs containing a plethora of plants with other shrubbery around the outside. Construction students renovated and painted a shed, painted the plant troughs and also created 3 wooden benches and a table out of old pallets. Supported learning students have been busy weeding as well as planting, watering and tending to the various shrubs and vegetables in the garden. Andy DeRisi, 18, who is studying a Construction Skills Diploma Level 1, said, "Making the benches and table was a good chance to put the skills we'd learnt into practice. It was good fun and I think they turned out really well." Supported learning student Michael Akar, 18, said, "We're growing cabbage, carrots, leeks and beans and take it in turns to look after them." The garden will be used by supported learning students who all have some form of learning difficulty to learn and develop their skills.
New council leaders pledge to tackle poverty and inequality. Enfield's new council leader has pledged to create the borough's first task force to tackle poverty and inequality, as she set out her political ambitions. The task force will ensure the council focuses its resources on areas where they're needed most, in order to help the 1 in 3 children in the borough who lives in poverty. New leader, Councillor Nezo Kaliskan, made the pledge in a letter sent to local Labour Party members on June the 11th. She also promised to review all services that have been outsourced and conduct a full assessment of fees spent on consultants and agency staff. On housing, the new leader pledged to provide more social housing and affordable homes and to get the Meridian water development back on track. The new Labour administration will ask for investment in more police and will to work closely with Mayor of London Sadiq Khan to secure extra funding for youth activities to stop young people getting caught up in crime. Customer services are set for a shake-up as Councillor Kaliskan pledged to investigate how the council could improve Enfield's call centres and the service at John Wilkes House in Edmonton. And with Enfield getting only around half the funding per person from the government than wealthier London boroughs like Westminster, the new administration will lobby for a fairer deal. The letter states, "It's been a really tough time for local government under the Tories. They have imposed staggering cuts to services, and there are even more Tory cuts on the way. But your local Labour Council will protect those most in need. We will fight back. We will build on previous successes by raising our sights and increasing our ambitions over the next 4 years." Councillor Kaliskan became Enfield's first female leader and, at 29, the youngest local authority leader in London when she was elected on May the 23rd. She took over from long-serving leader Doug Taylor after winning a leadership challenge at the Labour group's annual general meeting on May the 14th.
Grenfell Tower anniversary single. Singer and songwriter Carl Leroy is releasing his debut single, Grenfell We Won't Fall, as part of a charity project ahead of the first anniversary of the Grenfell fire tragedy. The Enfield singer has worked in collaboration with Paul Rumble of UK-based Brazilian band Verimundo and dance instructor Liliana Martin, who was personally affected by the tragedy. The song is an expression of Carl's personal experience helping with the Grenfell relief efforts right after the fire, and Liliana's journey with the system and charities 1 year on. Moulded with Paul's sensitive music arrangement, the song celebrates the strength and perseverance of the affected while they wait for justice. The proceeds from this song are aimed for charities working alongside the Grenfell community, like the Harrow Club and Latimer Community Church, whose two charities were key centres for coordinating volunteers and offered support to those affected by the Grenfell Tower fire on June the 14th, 2017. The song is available to download from grenfellsong.com and various online platforms.
Enfield businesses join forces to promote the town. You only have to walk through any town to see that the high streets are suffering by the number of shops that are standing empty. It appears that almost every few weeks we are hearing through the media about another high street multiple that is closing down and leaving yet another empty space. Enfield town is no different. Just stroll around and you can see too many empty properties. But the businesses in Enfield are doing something to try and fight back. Erdal Mehmet of G. Mantella Jewellers, who is the chair of the Enfield Town Business Association, told EN magazine, "We are in the process of trying to make Enfield a more attractive place for shoppers and businesses alike. We used to have support from EBRA, which is the Enfield Business and Retailers Association, which was part funded by Enfield Council, but was closed down a few years ago. Since then, we have had no one championing the needs of Enfield business and retailers. But rather than sit back, we have got together as retailers and local business to revitalise the Enfield Town Business Association. Out of our funds, which have been raised from donations from local businesses, we have managed to re-employ Mark Rudlin, the previous Ibra Town Centre manager. Although Mark's role is currently part-time, he is already making a huge impact in bringing together the local business owners and retailers to help each other." Chris Theodoulou of Emma Claire Hair and Beauty Spa, who is vice chair of the group, added, "We have had an amazing response from local businesses, large and small, who have put in their own money to help fund our initiative to try and bring a vibrant and full shopping centre back to Enfield Town." Other Enfield Town-based businesses, including Metaswitch, N21 Brickwork and Cambridge Construction, have also generously contributed. Mark has already opened dialogue with the council to try and gain funding for projects in Enfield and has arranged meetings with organisations who are thinking about opening outlets in the town to offer encouragement and support. However much local business do to try and support and make Enfield Town an attractive shopping destination, we rely on the public to keep being our customers. It is very hard, especially for many smaller independent local retailers, to compete with the online marketplace and large out-of-town shopping destinations. But the one thing we can do as local businesses is to work together to promote shopping in and supporting Enfield Town and hope our customers will continue to support us.
Hairdressers' success. Local hairdressing talent Hannah McGrath of 77 The Hill, Enfield, has successfully secured herself a place on the prestigious and highly sought-after Schwarzkopf Professional Young Artistic Team for 2018. Hannah, 20, from Enfield, has been working at 77 The Hill for 5 years and has found a true passion and a glowing talent in hairdressing. Once accepted for the Young Artistic Team finals, Hannah was put through her paces at an intense judging process which took place at Eastern Regal Hairdressing in London, where hopeful young stylists were assessed on their live cutting and styling work, presentation skills and potential for teamwork. Hannah floored the 5 famous industry judges with model guaranteeing her one of just 6 places on the team and beating hundreds of other young hopeful hairdressers up and down the country. The national competition is open to those of age 25 and under, and successful applicants are given the opportunity to work for a year under the wing of Schwarzkopf's premier hairdressers and technicians. Hannah can now look forward to exciting opportunities such as a photo shoot, stage presentations and a wealth of education sessions. "I was over the moon to have been selected," Hannah said. "I'm one of the first stylists from my salon to ever have got this far in the competition, so to be a part of the team is amazing, and I'm so excited for this year. So, watch this space in 2018, and you may even like to book in with this up-and-coming stylist at 77 Windmill Hill, Enfield."
And now we take a look at some of this week's sporting stories. First off, Cup glory for Carpatalaya in Enfield. Carpatalaya claimed their maiden Conifer World Football Cup title after defeating Northern Cyprus 3-2 on penalties in the final at Enfield Town's Queen Elizabeth II Stadium on Saturday. The Hungarians, hailing from Carpathian Ruthenia in southwestern Ukraine, held their nerve in front of a record crowd of 2,500 in the tournament for states, minorities, regions and stateless people not affiliated to FIFA. That came after a goalless and rather uninspiring final, despite the boisterousness of those in attendance, with flare-wielding Carpatalia supporters at one end of the ground creating quite a spectacle. Both sides would have been familiar with one another, having met in the group stages of the competition, where they drew 1-1. Indeed, Carpatalia's journey to the final consisted of disposing of Abzakia and thrashing Tibet 5-1 in their group, before seeing off Cascadia in the quarter-final and fellow Hungarian Szekely-Land 4-2 in the semis. But the first half of the final was firmly won, where both defences reigned supreme, with precious few chances created for either side. Only Alex Svedjuk's speculative long-range effort threatened to test either goalkeeper. After the break, Svedjuk continued to look Carpatalia's biggest threat alongside one of the players of the tournament, Georgi Toma, forcing Northern Cyprus goalkeeper Hasan Piro into action early in the second period. The best opportunity for Northern Cyprus was of a gilt-edged variety, arriving with less than 10 minutes of normal time to play. Arif Uysal ought to have hit the target, only to hit his effort wide from inside the box, a miss his side would live to regret. Neither side could force a winner in the little time that remained, with the last blast of the whistle from former Premier League referee Mark Clattenburg taking the game straight to penalties. Former St Mirren striker Billy Mehmet was one of the two Northern Cyprus players to miss from 12 yards to hand Carpatalia the early initiative. The Hungarians would then strike the woodwork from the spot, putting the destiny of the title back in the balance. However, Dmitry Moskayev subsequently kept his cool, where Halil Turnan did not, to hand Carpatalia a 3-2 victory and send their travelling contingent into raptures. In the third-fourth place final playoff, neither Padania nor Szekely-Land could avoid penalties after they too battled out a goalless 0-0 draw. Riccardo Ravasi went closest for Padania in 90 minutes before two misses from the spot from Szekely-Land handed Marco Goravelli the chance to secure victory under the bronze finish, and he duly secured a 5-4 win.
And here's some news of local cricket. Enfield bounced back from defeat last time out to record a comfortable 50-run win at Wickham House in Division 2 of the Middlesex League. The visitors won the toss and decided to bat first, with openers Jack Plum and Les Edwards getting their innings off to a flyer, and the pair added 83 for the first wicket before Edwards fell for 35. New batsmen Rehan Hassan and Plum kept the scoreboard ticking over, passing 100 for the loss of just one wicket. However, the game turned on its head as Enfield collapsed from 120 for 1 to 162 all out, thanks to a devastating bowling from Sahil Eliha and his brother Mahmood. Sahila finished with 7 for 38 and was backed up well by his brother Mahmood as the visitors threw away a promising start to be dismissed inside 48 overs. With the deteriorating wicket, accompanied by a variable bounce, Enfield might have considered 162 a defendable total on the surface that appeared right for bowling and unpredictable for the batsman. Indeed, Edwards struck in the very first over of Wickham's reply to dismiss Mahmood Khan for a third ball duck. Enfield clearly sensed an opportunity to make further inroads, reducing the host to 18 for 4, thanks to 3 quick breakthroughs from Dan Amedy, who would finish with 5 for 38. Ably supported by Edwards for 3 for 30 and Tom Bolt 2 for 18, Wickham, while ahead of the required rate, never truly looked like reaching the victory target and were eventually skittled out for just 112. Winchmore Hill made it back-to-back victories for a narrow 2-wicket success against Barnes. Host Barnes won the toss and elected to bat first, but with captain Dean Benson, 72, and star man Alex Scott, 131, leading their side to a 284 for 7 victory from just 50 overs. In response, Hill lost opener Morgan Pryor for just 8, bringing Jim Gatling to increase alongside Sam Weller. The pair combined for 181 runs. A brief wobble then followed, but captain's knock from Delay Ray Terra Blanche, 51, steered Hill through a tricky spell to victory with 3 overs and 2 wickets to spare.
And now for a spot of rugby. Grasshoppers first up for Ignations next season. There will be 3 new teams in London 2 North West next season, and Enfield Ignations start the campaign against newly promoted Grasshoppers in their league opener at home on September the 8th. Welling, back in the division after being relegated 2 seasons ago, are more familiar foes. However, the 2 teams won't clash until they meet at Donkey Lane on November the 3rd. Dropping down a league after a protracted spell in London 1 North are Letchworth Garden City, and Ignations host the Hertfordshire side on October the 6th. Letchworth are expected to be among the league's front-runners in tandem with Hampstead, beaten in the playoffs last season by Sudbury, plus Harpenden and Belsize Park. All sides play each other home and away during the course of the season, spanning 22 games. The other teams in the league are Chiswick, Hammersmith and Fulham, Hackney, London Nigerians and Hemel Hempstead.
And this article comes from the front page of the Enfield Over 50s Forum newsletter for the borough. Petition issues recognised. In a letter to Joan Ryan, MP for Enfield North, who raised the Forum's petition with the government, Local Government Minister Rishi Sunak MP says the specific issues raised by the Over 50s Forum Fairer Funding petition are being looked at closely. He recognises that the population in Enfield has changed since the last calculations of local government funding were made in 2013-14. And he goes on to confirm that they will in future use the latest data. And he will also consider whether it is possible to build in future projections of population growth. Mr Sunak says the review of funding for local authorities now being carried out by his officials will deliver up-to-date, robust and responsive funding distribution mechanisms for future financial settlements. I also recognise that deprivation levels drive service demand, including for children's services. In thanking Joan Ryan for her persistence in getting the all-party supported petition onto the Minister's desk, Monty Meth, President of the Over 50s Forum, said this is only round 1 of our campaign to secure funding justice for Enfield. The Forum's petition called upon central government to provide a fair share of funding for Enfield using the latest data. It asked ministers to acknowledge the needs of a borough with a growing and diverse population, which is now the 12th most deprived in London. The petition also called for the ending of a scheme introduced 16 years ago, whereby Enfield's funding allocation has been cut back every year to help councils outside London. The National Audit Office, the NAO, has warned the government that many councils are now on the verge of bankruptcy due to funding cuts. In many parts of the country, weekly bin collections have already been cut by 33%. Food hygiene checks on cafes and restaurants have been reduced by 41%. and 10% of libraries have been shut. The NAO found that despite these cuts, councils are still unable to balance their books due to the increased pressures on adult social care. It says the number of people aged 65 and over needing help has gone up by 14.3%. Councils cannot legally run up a deficit, and so they have no alternative to making cuts if they are to remain solvent. 2/3 of all councils are dipping into their reserves to fund essential services. Hence the Forum's determination to see that the new funding pot we are promised ends the anomaly whereby Enfield receives £320 per resident and some other London boroughs get over £500 per resident.
Theatre groups unite in bid to create a festival like no other. Chicken Shed's Summer Festival will feature a mixture of performances, workshops and talks that are being guided by children and young people. The 10 new works include an adaptation of Clive King's Stig of the Dump, developed by members of the Children's and Youth Theatre, The Raft, which is a youth theatre exploration of the refugee crisis, and The Space Between Us, an intergenerational exploration with a cast aged between 14 to 84. And the article gives a brief outline of those 3 works just to give us a taste of what we can expect. Firstly, Stig of the Dump. Everybody had told Barney not to play too near the edge of the chalk pit. But today was one of those grey days when there was nothing to do, nothing to play, and nowhere to go, except to the chalk pit. The dump! This new adaptation of Stig of the Dump has been developed by members of Chicken Shed's Youth Theatre alongside youth theatre directors Matthew Lyons and Robin Shillinglaw for a performance with a cast of 100 children and the young people from within the company. Raft. When a group of young people find themselves on a raft in the middle of the ocean, the question remains about how they all came to be there. As time passes, they piece together the causes of their predicament, who they are, where they've come from, what has been lost from their human world, and what is yet to be found in the great expanse of the natural one. A devised ensemble piece combining text, movement, and an original score that poses the questions about what defines our experience of the life without the rules of modern society, and what we would all do with a second chance at civilization. And the space between us. The iconic album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band has reached out and connected with every generation since its first hearing 51 years ago. The Space Between Us theatrically celebrates this groundbreaking Beatles album by bringing together an intergenerational cast, some of whom remember singing along to the album when it was released in 1967, and creating a unique piece of theatre inspired by the histories of the people involved. This innovative year-long project has produced a wealth of stories which have gone on to inspire movement, spoken word and song. By working across the generations, the cast has strengthened the belief that there isn't much space between us after all. Now the details. The Chicken Shed Theatre is at Chaseside, Southgate, N14 4PE. And the Summer Festival runs from June the 25th to July the 14th. And you can get details from ringing 020 8292 9222.
And here's a very topical article called 5 Myths About Hay Fever. Stuffy nose, watery eyes, itchy throat. When it comes to getting out and enjoying the good weather during the summer months, being one of the unlucky 18 million people in the UK who suffer from hay fever is never fun. The irritating symptoms occur when the body comes into contact with an allergen and the immune system is kicked into overdrive. Although it's easily remedied with the right antihistamines, if you're a first-time sufferer, it doesn't help. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about how you should treat or prevent an allergy attack. We asked Dr. Jean Emberline, a pollen expert speaking on behalf of Opticrom, to help debunk 5 of the most common misconceptions. Misconception number 1. Flowers cause allergies. Lots of people wrongly associate hay fever with colourful blooms, but, as Dr. Emberline says, showy flowers usually have insect-dispersed pollen, which is heavy and is carried between the flowers by insects, so it does not get carried in the air. The pollen most likely to cause an allergy is actually the airborne type from grass, weeds and trees, such as birch and oak. These types of pollen are small and light and are produced in vast numbers. They can either be breathed in or enter through the eyes. They can trigger allergic reactions of hay fever. Misconception number 2. Hay fever is caused by hay. Hay is actually cut grass, says Dr. Emberline, and while it may contain grass pollen, can trigger hay fever, it is certainly not the main cause. Misconception number 3, that rain can clear pollen. There is some truth to this claim because rain temporarily clears the air, but often before a downpour there is an increase in wind, and that gust has downdrafts of air. Stormy weather can also make the particles easier to inhale. During rainfall, grass pollen grains can burst, releasing minute starch particles held within them, and they contain the allergen. Misconception 4. Rubbing Vaseline on my nose will cure my hay fever. Think of your nose like a chimney with smoke going up. Some of the smoke might cling to the outside of the chimney like soot, but most of the smoke will still make its way upwards. She explains that the same is true with your nose. You put a Vaseline around the outside, it might catch a few grains, but most of the pollen is still likely to go up your nose. And finally, honey can cure my hay fever. Many people swear that a spoonful of local honey on your porridge each day immunises you against pollen and helps alleviate hay fever symptoms. So, is it true? The nutrients in honey might help the immune system, and it certainly won't do any harm to eat honey, but I'm afraid it certainly isn't going to cure your hay fever.
Foods to boost beauty from the inside out. With the UK beauty and personal care market valued at around £13 billion a year, it's clear that consumers are willing to invest cash to look good. So few of us actually consider what goes on inside. We spend a lot of money on pills, potions and lotions, and actually none of that can undo the effects of a bad diet, says consultant dietitian Lucy Jones. Here, Jones reveals 5 beauty-boosting foods and how you can incorporate them into your diet. Number 1 is almonds. Most people now know that vitamin E, an antioxidant, helps to protect cells from oxidative damage, which is really important in terms of beauty. 1 portion of almonds, which is a handful, contains 60% of your daily requirement of vitamin E. Standard almond milks are often fortified with calcium, vitamin B12 and vitamin D. So for that reason, when people go completely plant-based in their diet, I often tell them not to go organic when it comes to things like almond milk because it's not fortified. Number 2, avocados. Fats are needed in a healthy, balanced diet, from keeping our cells supple right through to our nails. Most of our fat should come from plant-based sources like avocado. I would have 1 slice of whole grain toast with almond butter, 1 slice of toast with smashed avocado, and an egg and some smoked salmon, and then some mushrooms on the side. Number 3 is fish. Zinc is the only nutrient with an EFSA, which stands for European Food Safety Authority, approved claim of supporting nail health. Sources in your diet are meat and fish, and again nuts like almonds. For zinc, shellfish is particularly good, and organ meats as well. Number 4, oils. We have had a generation of people on low-fat diets, which is not good for beauty because fat plays such a role in cell structure. But you can certainly get the wrong balance of them. Most of our fat should come from plant-based foods like olive oil, nuts and seeds, and oily fish. And finally, number 5, shiitake mushrooms. We don't tend to eat much of them, but sun-ripened mushrooms like shiitake mushrooms are really high in vitamin D. Vitamin D is a big beauty nutrient. It plays a role in our nail health, our general health, in our immune systems, right through to our bone health.
And now for some letters. Proven trip hazards, and this is by Dr. Linda Miller, who sent this by email. As ever, Councillor Anderson is economical with the truth in defending the use of orca lane separators. Enfield Independent, Council won't remove orcas from cycle lanes, June the 6th. He claims the orcas are a standard safety feature from Transport for London, TfL. That would be the bit of TfL that is funding the cycle lane Enfield scheme. He conveniently forgets that a road safety audit, also conducted by TfL, recommended that Enfield did not use orcas because they are trip hazards. 4 local authorities have now removed these obstacles from their roads because they are proven trip hazards. Yet in Enfield, we are just told to use the appropriate scheduled crossings. And why is it that people are not doing so? Councillor Anderson also forgets that under the Cycle Enfield scheme, many of the controlled crossings were moved away from pedestrian desire lines in pursuit of continuous cycle lanes at road junctions, while pedestrian refuges, islands, have been all but eliminated in order to fit in segregated lanes. And what is Councillor Anderson's evidence exactly for claiming that more families are using the cycle lanes? Or that more people are feeling safe? Certainly not the very many people who have fallen victim to the trip hazards, nor those who report having had to jump out of the way of cyclists who pass buses without slowing when passengers are trying to board or alight, despite passengers having right of way at bus stops. We should also perhaps remember that this is the councillor who stated on a public forum that cyclists riding the wrong way on cycle lanes was a sign of the scheme's success. The police thought rather differently. So will most of your readers, I suspect.
And here's a letter from Anna Carver, who's replying to a Mr. Andrews of Gordon Road, who wrote Cuddly Little Killers letters on June the 6th. Mr. Andrews, you make it sound as if cats are the evilest of beings, plotting to kill the entire bird population. This is what humans do, not animals. If you saw the cat attack from your kitchen window, why didn't you frighten him away? Contact the owner and politely suggest a safe collar with a bell. Cats are not covered in fleas and certainly do not pose a health risk. They contribute greatly to the health of their owners, and I'm sure Anna Carver speaks for a lot of cat owners out there.
And finally, tough times for citizens' advice. Jill Harrison explained to forum members attending the April Civic Centre meeting that when she was appointed as CEO of Citizens' Advice Enfield 4 years ago, the service was almost entirely council funded. The trustees could see that this was unlikely to continue, so one of my tasks was to diversify sources of funding. Each CAB office is an independent charity and responsible for raising its own money. Today, the council still contributes about 60% of the funds, but the total pot has reduced significantly. Hence the decision to open a charity shop at 40 Green Lanes, N136HT, just south of the North Circular. Jill urges members of the forum to donate goods for sale in the shop or offer to volunteer to work there, or at least go along to browse through the goods and hopefully buy. And while funding is falling, demand continues to rise. The main service at Vincent House is faced with long queues of people every day, and often more than half have to be turned away. Lack of funding means the service is being cut from 4 to 3 days a week, and 20% of the staff have been made redundant. Although much of the work is done by volunteers, some paid staff are needed to do some tasks, including training and supervising those volunteers and ensuring legal requirements are met. They also make home visits for housebound people and do outreach visits. Many government leaflets tell people to go to Citizens Advice for more information, but we get no government funding at all, said Jill. About 1/3 of people want help with benefits and tax issues, and in Enfield there is a particularly high level of inquiries, in brackets twice the national average, in CAB offices for about housing. In the last 12 months, Citizens Advice Enfield has helped 7,811 people solve over 26,000 problems. And the complexity of the problems is increasing, especially as the rules keep changing, and for some clients there really is no longer a safety net. In some cases, for example, debt advice, a client can stay with the CAB for about a year while all options are considered and the paperwork is completed. It is no wonder that training to be a counsellor volunteer takes about 2 days a week for 18 months. Although volunteers handling initial phone calls can be trained 1 day a week for a couple of months. Jill urges any forum members who are looking for a challenge and a way to help their fellow local residents to talk to CAB about volunteering. Citizens Advice Enfield pays about £8,000 to CAB head office, which does a lot of the research and campaign work and gathers data to help build a case when it lobbied government, for instance on reducing the time people needed to wait for the initial universal credit payment. If you are interested in helping out at the shop, please phone or email the shop on 020 8351 8349 or the shop at enfieldcab.org.uk or drop in and have a chat. You can also find out more about the role at http://citizensadviceenfield, that's all one word, .org.uk/charity shop. If you're donating goods and you can't park, please stop outside the side of the shop and phone them and they will try to come out and take your donations. Buses 121, 329 and 232 heading towards Turnpike Lane stop right outside the shop, alight at Tottenhall Road. And did you know Citizens Advice was initially set up during World War II to help people with problems such as losing their ration books, tracing missing relatives, or what to do when their home was destroyed by bombing. But almost from the beginning, the advice covered a much wider range of issues, and so the bureaus were continued after the war ended, although government funding was cut and numbers reduced from 1,000 in 1942 to about 500 in the 1950s and to 300 now, giving advice from 2,700 locations.
Thank you, Romany. You learn something every day. That's a lot there I didn't know. Well, we've now reached the end of our programme for this week, so thank you for listening. And from the team of Katherin, Romany, Ros, Patricia and Dem on the controls, it's goodbye. Please remember to turn over the address label in your postal packet. Put the memory stick into the packet in a closed position and return it to us as soon as possible, in readiness for the next edition. Don't forget, you can call Diane de Jersey regarding any help you may require in connection with Enfield Talking newspaper on 020 8805 6578. Coming up next, the latest news and information for the Greater London area from InfoSound. And the Enfield Talking newspaper will be with you again in 1 week's time.